The Minnesota Twins will not make the postseason if Joe Ryan has to miss any extended period of time.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Twins, part of the Locked On Podcast and Network. I'm CJ Baumgartner, Twins writer for Zone Coverage, and here we go. Not feeling too great about the recent Joe Ryan start and some injury news. We're going to talk about that. Do want to say today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Join all the action at FanDuel.com to play daily dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a homer this MLB season. Lots to talk about in today's show, including Walker Jenkins, why, as we've mentioned before, it's time to call him up. But now that the trade deadline has passed, why they need to make a 40-man roster move, and it may mean getting rid of this one Twins utility man. We talk about that. We also talk about why Ryan Kreidler has turned into a pumpkin and what do the Twins do with him until Kalen Culpepper is ready. We talk about all that and more in today's show. But first, our top story: if Joe Ryan misses any significant period of time, the Minnesota Twins playoff hopes are dead. I mean, that's really it, because Joe Ryan is so impactful for this team and why they are where they are at right now with his first half ERA being around 3, being an all-star, just keeping the team together, being their most consistent pitcher over the course of the year. Yeah, Taj Bradley has flashed a lot higher highs, but he's also had a lot lower lows. And there's just a little bit more volatility with Taj Bradley. Joe Ryan, on the other hand, has been that consistent, steady wave, consistently pitching well, a couple rougher starts here and there, but overall, night in and night out, you knew exactly what you were getting from Joe Ryan. And now, second half Joe Ryan is starting to rear its ugly head. And let me just give you the numbers again over the course of Joe Ryan's career, if you want to look at everything kind of put together with how he plays in the first half of seasons compared to the second half of seasons. And if you want to take a look again at just over the course of his career in 2021, didn't really have a first half, second half type of split. 2022, if you want to look at pre-All-Star break, post-All-Star break, he pitched pretty much like the same pitcher. Innings were roughly around the same spot. His OPS allowed was a little higher, but nothing super jumping off the page. He was about a run higher, a 2.99 ERA in the first half, then a 4.14 ERA in the second half. But a lot of those underlying numbers staying relatively the same, just a little bit unluckier when it came to some of the base runners and some of the things like that. If you go then to 2023, and that's really where second half Joe Ryan narratives started taking off, which was, again, Joe Ryan pre-All-Star break in 2023, a 3.70 ERA. In 2023 second half, 6.09 ERA. And of course, the home run numbers jumping off the page, 16 home runs allowed in 54 2/3 innings in the second half for Joe Ryan, a 935 OPS allowed. Again, OPS on base plus slugging. If you go to 2024, a 667 OPS in the pre-All-Star break portion, post-All-Star break 0.593. But the ERA, again, just a little bit higher in the second half of 2024. Joe Ryan also missed time with an injury. He only pitched 20 innings. 20 1/3 innings is what he pitched after the All-Star break in 2024. Of course, he had that start in Wrigley, missed a bunch of time, and the Twins ended up collapsing without him. And then also Joe Ryan in 2025, All-Star season, 2.72 ERA in the first half, looked awesome. A 4.67 ERA in the second half, only pitched 61 2/3 innings compared to 109 1/3 innings in the first half of the season. An OPS that's 200 points higher in that second half. And again, small sample size here for Joe Ryan now, but let's look at it. Pre-All-Star break this year, a 614 OPS, a 2.85 ERA. Now, a 9.39 ERA and an OPS of over 1,100. Now, it's just been 15 innings, but again, let's look at the numbers for Joe Ryan. And again, this is a Cleveland blow-up start in one of these home run allowing games, but Joe Ryan has allowed 7 home runs post-All-Star break this year in 3 starts. He's allowed 10 in the first half on just 20 starts. second half Joe Ryan has been a very real thing. And the reason why has been injuries. Joe Ryan had injury issues last year, missed a lot of time. Joe Ryan had injury issues in 2024, missed time. Joe Ryan had injury issues that started in the first half of 2023. But of course, that was the infamous didn't tell the team about the groin injury, then got put on the IL. And you've seen this problem with Joe Ryan, not that every single time he's been trying to play through injuries, but also you've had a guy who just tends to wear down in the second half of seasons. And whether it's completely like having to go on the IL and miss starts, or it's been what it's been right now, where Joe Ryan missed a start because of arm fatigue, and Joe Ryan was trying to slow play things, and he's been talking about yesterday. I mean, there are some quotes in this Dan Hayes piece from The Athletic here talking about Joe Ryan and just some of the comments he made after his start and what he is talking about, what he's been going through in this stretch that hasn't looked good for the Twins. And if you want that quote here, it's in Dan Hayes' piece of The Athletic. He says, quote, "Ryan, I think it's been frustrating for sure. I think we're trying to get everything right throughout the week and just not getting back to where I need to be." And then, again, just teammates clearly. Ryan Jeffers talking about how he looks out of sync, kind of alluding to that fact. And Joe Ryan now is going to go back to the Twin Cities. He is pretty much not for sure going to go on the IL, but I mean, based on how things are pointed to, again, this is according to Dan Hayes of The Athletic, back and glute issues are going to send him back for evaluation at Target Field. And I'm not saying he's going to miss a start or go on the IL and panic here, but you don't do that kind of stuff unless an IL trip is imminent, or at least it's a high possibility for the Twins that they could be without Joe Ryan. And it's the second half Joe Ryan. He's pitched bad because he's just wore down. I mean, even if you look at his fastball velocities in yesterday's start against the Kansas City Royals, this fastball velocity was down by over a mile per hour, 1.3 miles per hour down. Splitter velocity down. Sinker velocity down, albeit the slider velocity up just a little bit. But this is the thing with Joe Ryan. He wears down, either gets injured or is pitching just on wore down physicality, and you start to see things fall apart. The biggest thing I noticed with Joe Ryan, the whiff rate, 7 whiffs on 45 swings yesterday. That's a 16% whiff rate for Joe Ryan. He had just 3 strikeouts last night. If you want to look at the season whiff rate for Joe Ryan, 25.5%, which is just around league average for pitchers. So when you go like that and you don't get swings and misses if you're Joe Ryan, things get bad for you pretty quickly. And even over his last couple starts, he's had only 3 whiffs in the start before. He just hasn't been a guy who's been able to generate a ton of swing and misses. And that's when he gets hit hard. And that's when teams take him deep. And if you're Joe Ryan and you're injured and you're missing time, that puts a lot of pressure on just Taj Bradley to be the main Twins pitcher. There's question marks about Connor Prelip eventually getting shut down. Sebby Matthews got sent down, but there was question marks about him long-term in the starting rotation. You also have Bailey Ober, question marks about him and his durability, and can he get past the 4th inning? And Dean Kramer, who is the new guy in the fold and could have some upside and is under team control for next year, but also there's question marks on him. He has an ERA of 6.5. And while I think that's overblown, like I think that he's pitched a little better than what his stats have shown, I don't think he's all of a sudden going to come in and be Joe Ryan level production. And if your only good starting pitcher is Taj Bradley, well, that puts a lot of pressure on your offense to do the work. And as we talked about before with this Twins offense, they right now are worse than the Kansas City Royals post All-Star break. They are a bottom 5 offense post All-Star break. You have a lot of Twins hitters regressing. So if you are going to have the lineup regressing and you don't even have the 1-2 punch at the top of your rotation of Joe Ryan and Taj Bradley, you're in rough shape. And it's going to make this high that the Twins had of buying at the deadline, getting Hoffman, getting Minter, getting Kramer, getting Nance, getting these pitchers into the fold is going to mean nothing if the starting rotation collapses. And this is why I tried to say it. I said it before the deadline. I said it after the deadline. The Twins needed to add one more starting pitcher. You couldn't have gone and gotten Robbie Ray. Like, you couldn't have gone and gotten one more low-end starting pitcher. You didn't need to go get Kevin Gossman. You didn't need to go get Tarek Skubal. But you could have went and got somebody at the to just be in your rotation and eat innings and help out and be a part of this thing. And they didn't, and it's going to bite them because second half Joe Ryan has showed up in the sense of his stuff doesn't play up. He wears down physically. And unfortunately, that's meant that Joe Ryan's been on the injured list. Second, and potentially staring down the barrel of that again. That doesn't mean second half Joe Ryan equals injured. It just means second half Joe Ryan equals wore down, which usually leads to an injury. And this is why, again, if you don't have Joe Ryan, you didn't supplement for that. And yeah, Ryan Gallagher has pitched well in AAA, but it's unfair to assume Ryan Gallagher is going to pitch at a Joe Ryan level the rest of the way. And the Twins offense has question marks, and they didn't do enough to address the rest of the starting rotation. And that's why if you miss Joe Ryan for a significant period of time, I know he's pitched bad, but if you don't have him for a month, the buying isn't going to matter. You're going to fall in this race unless the offense picks up, and it's highly unlikely it's going to do that. All right, we are going to continue talking Minnesota Twins baseball, including, speaking of Twins offense being bad, Ryan Kreidler turned back into a pumpkin. What do the Twins do with him? I got my solution. That's coming up after this. Locked on Twins today is brought to you by FanDuel. Because you're a Twins fan, if you think you know who's hitting a homer today, FanDuel is giving you a free chance to call your shot with daily dingers. It's easy to play. Just make your free pick for who you think will hit a home run in their game. If you're right, you'll receive a profit boost to use on your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. Best of all, you can make a free pick every day throughout the MLB season. Daily Dingers is another fun way to stay engaged with everyday's games. Whether you're following your favorite team or keeping an eye on matchups across the league, every game has someone capable of going deep. Now you get the chance to make your prediction before first pitch. Now, Kyle Schwarber right now, if you look at the standings in the home run race, right now is at plus 190 to win the MLB home run crown in 2026. Second best odds, by the way, according to FanDuel. Jordan's still at number 1. And again, one of my favorite parts of baseball is just that every day brings fresh matchups and new storylines. So even if you're not going with Schwarber or you're not going with Jordan, Daily Dingers gives you another reason to pay attention before that first pitch because you never know who's going yard. So are you ready to play your game today? Join all the action at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to play Daily Dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a homer. Play ball and swing for the fences on FanDuel, an official partner of the MLB. Ryan Kreidler's turned into a pumpkin, and the Twins have to keep playing him. I mean, that's essentially where we're at with Kreidler and how things shake out. I still think he deserves to be the Twins' everyday shortstop, and mainly just because I just like his defense. And even though he's not hitting well, offensively, he has turned back into a pumpkin. You at least have the defense to back things up and at least be the best defender on this team in the infield. And I'm not going to give that up over somebody who maybe has a little bit higher OPS in Tristan Gray or sliding a few things over. Kalen Culpepper just isn't ready yet. I know he had a double. I know he's put a good game together, but also you can't just call him back up quite yet. He's been struggling. He's had a batting average below 200 since returning from the IL. And that's not to say he's going to be bad or you should be concerned about that long term. It's just to say that he was on the injured list for a couple weeks. And so he needs to get himself right. He needs to see pitching. He needs to get things lined up. He needs to mash a little bit more before you make that call up and get him going. I mean, I know the Twins lineup is struggling right now. And we are going to talk about, by the way, Walker Jenkins and calling him up. So all of that is I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth here a little bit, but when there are calls to call both of them up at the same time, I would hold back, split that baby, prefer Jenkins call up, wait a couple more weeks, then go with Kalen Culpepper, or at the very least see where things are at. Kalen Culpepper isn't quite ready to be called up just yet. I would give him some more time to see some pitches, to get his swing back, timing back, all that stuff in AAA. But all of that to be said about Ryan Kreidler, that means you at least need Ryan Kreidler to be this team's starting shortstop over the next couple weeks. And things have been rough for Ryan Kreidler in the second half of the season. If you look at Kreidler, he has just a 2% walk rate, yeesh, a 20% strikeout rate, which has stayed the same, but it just means, again, that he is swinging, he is making contact with pitches maybe you don't always want to. The strikeout rate is basically the same, but when you're not walking, teams will just pound the strike zone on you because they are not afraid of Ryan Kreidler doing things against them. So they'll pound the strike zone, they will go after you, and then they'll dare you to do damage against them. And in the second half of the year, again, very small sample size, just, again, a couple weeks worth of games, but in the second half of the year, Ryan Kreidler has a 184 batting average and an OPS of 506. He has an isolated power of 122. He has a weighted runs created plus of 32 in the second half of the season. Compare that in the first half of the year where it was at 112. And he had a batting average of 256 and an OPS of 758, which again aren't numbers that scream, whoa, future diamond in the rough, like stud. But what it does mean is it's, okay, that guy's a competent major leaguer. And that's something that Ryan Kreidler hadn't shown from a hitting perspective at any point in his big league career. And so for the Twins, it did look like they found a little diamond in the rough there. But this second half, these 2-week stretch has just kind of shown that, oh yeah, that's kind of Ryan Kreidler in this 2-week stretch has been the hitter that Ryan Kreidler has been. There's a reason the Twins got him as a minor league free agent in the winter. I mean, he still had team control by the Tigers, and they decided to let him go early because they weren't really scared of losing him. And again, whatever he's done for the Twins at this point in the year has been worth bringing him on, and it still is a plus in terms of bringing him in because of what he has done offensively in the first half of the season. But you got to continue to win games. You got to continue to be in this race. If the Twins were out of the wild card race and they sold and they did whatever, I'd say, who cares? Start Ryan Kreidler until Culpepper is ready. But now that you're winning, now all of a sudden you care about Ryan Kreidler, or at least now that you're in the fray of the wild card chase, you care if you have Ryan Kreidler at shortstop or not, because you have to find a way to maximize this lineup any way you can. And when you look at Kreidler offensively and what he's provided, it's not necessarily one that really gets you very excited overall with the numbers that he's put up. And if you're the Twins, you have no other choice but to continue to play Ryan Kreidler at shortstop every day because Kalen Culpepper is not ready. Now, Kreidler may be able to turn it around. He may be able to do some stuff. And again, it's not like shortstop is the highest demand from an offensive perspective. You are willing to play guys who aren't as good at hitters at shortstop because it's such a key defensive position. And for Kreidler, they need to make sure that they play that position well, because the rest of their infield defense with Royce over at first, which has been a very rough work in progress. You have Brooks Lee, who's shown some flashes at third base, but not like a gold glover by any stretch of the imagination. And Cody Clemens, who's worked in a little bit at second base and has been okay there overall. But I just think that with Kreidler, you need to continue playing him, even though offensively he's turned into a pumpkin. But this does take a huge hit for the Twins. I think Ryan Kreidler has just been overexposed at his position. He's not an everyday player, and that's not a knock on Ryan Kreidler. I'm not trying to say he sucks. I just think that he's not good enough to be an everyday MLB shortstop. And if you want him to play more, if you want him to be that everyday guy, he's got to hit better. And he just hasn't been able to do that over the last couple of weeks. And it shows you why it's like, oh yeah, there's a reason why he was available, but he's still going to have a very Twins tenure. I still want Ryan Kreidler on this Twins team for the next couple of years as that utility guy because he can play shortstop. And if he can just play matchups, if he can play in kind of these hyper fixated matchups and things and be in situations where you feel a little bit better putting him in spots. I mean, if you look at him versus weirdly, he's hit right-handed pitching better than left-handed pitching this season. He has a 68 weighted runs created plus against lefties versus a 107 weighted runs created plus versus righties over the course of the year. But still, you can use him in some of these very specific situations. You can try and get him good matchups. You can try and do whatever. You can have him play once a week, come in defensively at end of games, kind of that sort of situation for Kreidler. I think he's a spot starter, utility man. Put him around the field, play in the corner outfields, play in center field late in games, play anywhere. He's useful to a team. He's just not an everyday player. And that's why Ryan Kreidler is turning back into a pumpkin. Because implying that, again, the reason people say turn into a pumpkin, Cinderella story, the pumpkin turns into the carriage, then at midnight it turns back into the pumpkin. And he's had his moment. He had his fun. He's very useful, and the Twins will benefit from that this year. So it's not like he didn't do anything, but he's just showing you the player that he's probably going to end up being more often than not, which is a guy that has trouble hitting at the MLB level, but can play with his glove at a level that keeps him sticking around as a utility and as a backup. But for now, Kreidler is showing why he is not an everyday player, but he is going to have to continue being so for at the very least the next couple weeks. All right, we are going to wrap up our Twins discussion by talking about Walker Jenkins and his path to the big leagues. What are the Twins going to have to do to get him on the roster? What moves are they going to have to make now that we are past the trade deadline? I explain what they have to do next. A big thank you to our friends at Amazon for this limited break, because this back-to-school season, spend less on your kids with Amazon. We all know how crazy the back-to-school shopping experience can be. It starts with a few items on the list, and then suddenly you're shopping for supplies, clothes, lunch gear, tech, and about 10 other things you didn't see coming. I mean, it really does add up fast. And when you think about it, when the school says your child needs a calculator or headphones or that tablet for class, somehow you're buying another one before the semester is halfway over. Since when did kids need this much tech for the third grade? Certainly not when I was in school. When it's 9 p.m. the night before school starts and suddenly someone remembers they need folders, notebooks, markers, and apparently 12 other things that nobody decided to mention until now, nothing gets the heart rate up quite like emergency school shopping. Am I right? I'm convinced Prime's Deliver Tomorrow Before 7 a.m. feature was created exclusively for parents in this moment. So remember, with Amazon's low back-to-school prices, just spend less on your kids, because every dollar you don't spend on them is a dollar you haven't spent on them. Shop back to school at Amazon and spend less on your kids. The Twins probably need to DFA Tristan Gray to get Walker Jenkins up to the big league level, outside of an injured list stint for somebody. I mean, Walker Jenkins needs to be with the Minnesota Twins. And when you look at the Twins' 40-man roster, there just isn't a ton of places for them to go and for them to really just see where the next move is. And I was kind of hoping that the trade deadline would create some clarity. And you could see the Twins were trying to have the trade deadline create some clarity as well, because they decided that they were going to try and trade Trevor Larnach. I mean, they had a deal in place. They were going to do it. The Astros owner was the one who nixed it. So they were going to trade Trevor Larnach. And when you trade Trevor Larnach, that made the path wide open for Walker Jenkins. We talked about that earlier in some of our reaction shows and some of the other shows. So go back and watch those earlier in the week. And so then it leaves you in this conundrum. If you're the Twins, you still have Trevor Larnach. You also have Alan Roden, who you're trying to get a look at. You have Austin Martin, who is useful against lefties as a righty. And Walker Jenkins is a left-handed hitter, isn't going to be as useful against lefties. And of course, you have Luke Keyshaw, who all of a sudden has been put in center field while Buxton has been on the IL. So where is that consistent playing time for Walker Jenkins? Because you're not going to call him up unless you know that he is going to be an everyday player. Well, there is a couple different moves you could go with to try and get there. And I think the path of least resistance is probably DFAing Tristan Gray. And again, it's not that I think Tristan Gray stinks or I don't want him on my team at all. I just think that, again, as we talked about with Kreidler, had some big moments, played well, but overall, just not going to do it for you in a long stretch of time. And so what that means is you would have to DFA a Tristan Gray to create a spot on the 40-man roster, because right now there is no Walker Jenkins on the 40-man roster. And to get him on the big league club, you have to add him to the 40-man roster. And that getting rid of Tristan Gray is the path of least resistance. There is another option. There's another option as well. There are two options that make a lot of sense. I think DFAing Tristan Gray is probably, again, path of least resistance in the sense of, yeah, you lose Tristan Gray, you expose him to waivers. There's a chance that he slides through it this late in the season and you bring him back, or another team picks him up. Thanks for the memories, and you move on. And then it opens a spot for Walker Jenkins to be on the 26-man roster. The only problem is with DFAing Tristan Gray, you get rid of the utility infielder, but now all of a sudden it doesn't really alleviate any of the outfield spots. You got to figure out, okay, well, who plays right? Still, it's probably Roden and Martin platooning. Okay, well, Trevor Larnach's playing left. And okay, Luke Keyshaw's in center. And you're not really going to move much of those guys around Rodon hasn't really been a center fielder. So again, you're not going to be able to shuffle around this outfield a ton to be able to fit Walker Jenkins, but that is probably path of least resistance. Another one in terms of path of least resistance, but you're giving up on an asset, albeit not necessarily a prospect, but you're giving up on one, is DFAing Kyler Fedko. You could DFA Kyler Fedko, hope another team doesn't pick him up, and then you just stash him back off the 40-man roster. Kyler Fedko could be that option. The only problem is if you need a right-handed hitting corner outfielder, you have one less option. Now, Gabby Gonzalez could be in that mix as well, being as a corner outfielder. We haven't really talked about him much in this mix as well, but he's certainly in that. You could DFA Kyler Fedko. You get rid of him. He's not a prospect. He had his MLB opportunity, didn't really make the most of it. You say, sorry, them's the breaks, and you create that 40-man roster spot by getting rid of Kyler Fedko. The other one, and this is one that I don't see the Twins doing, is you could DFA Josh Bell. And by DFAing Josh Bell, you then would open up DH for Trevor Larnach to be the team's DH for the rest of the year. And then Walker Jenkins could slide in and play left field, or he could play right field and he slide Rodon and Martin over to left. That is also a solution for how to get Walker Jenkins to the big league club. The other one, which would be, again, if we talk about the thing that would do it, would be adding somebody to the injured list. And then when you add somebody to the injured list, I believe it's the 60-day IL is how you can make room for that. But again, there's really nobody who you could add to the 60-day IL that's currently on the injured list outside of Byron Buxton. And if you do that, well, then things are going to be in trouble, because this Twins lineup at the major league level has been incredibly healthy all year long. Pitchers can't say the same thing at all. But for the Twins, if somebody goes on the 60-day IL, sure, you could say that. If Buxton goes on the 60-day IL, you're probably using it to create a 40-man roster spot for Walker Jenkins. But if you do that, he's out for the year. So you're probably not going to do that. Even if he is out for the year, you're not going to do that and take that option away, because maybe he won't be. But again, if you look at Kyler Fedko, I think getting rid of Kyler Fedko probably makes the most sense. But he's a younger asset, still some platoon advantages, things like that. Getting rid of Tristan Gray, yeah, you lose the infielder, but you also know that one's coming up soon. You also know that you have Brooks Lee that can slide around. Cody Clemens can slide around. There are some utility options you can make. And not only, because if you get rid of Fedko, it clears up a 40-man roster spot, but it doesn't clear up a 26-man roster spot. Getting rid of Gray would clear up the spot on the Twins roster specifically. Again, the only problem is you have to shuffle things around and create playing time. And there's just not a ton to go around right now. Even though Walker Jenkins would be better than a lot of the guys on the Twins lineup, or in theory, he's more talented. Maybe that's the better way to phrase it. You're not going to rip these guys out of the roles that they've all kind of been nestled into. It's a very weird nut to crack right now that kind of needs somebody to go on the injured list. And I'm not saying somebody getting hurt, or I want somebody to get hurt, but it feels like an injury is going to be the only thing that it is going to take to get Walker Jenkins up here right now, because he should be. I mean, Walker Jenkins should be up with the Twins. He's played well. If you look at, again, how he's hit over the last month, an 850 OPS over the last 90 days, a 960 OPS. He had a great game on Tuesday night. And I know you can't get excited after one game and be like, aha, see, one game. But you do need to, again, put it all into perspective, because he went 0 for 4 today. But also, you can't get too high or too low off of one game. But in totality, he has just proven that, yeah, he can hit at this level. And it's been consistent. And I just think that there's nothing much for him to prove. I know it's an offensive-heavy league in the independent league. I know that there is a lot of offensive heaviness in the St. Paul Saints version of AAA. But, I mean, he's doing it. It's not like it's a 750 OPS. And you're like, oh, cool, he's hitting at average numbers. Like, he's hitting well. And I think he's proven that he can hit that level of pitching. Now we need to find out if he can hit the next level. And that's where I'm at with Walker Jenkins. And they're going to need to create a 40-man roster spot. They need to create a 35-man roster, a 26-man roster spot, I beg your pardon, as well. And that is going to come, I think, with DFAing Tristan Gray. If you wanted to make that move today, if you want to make that move in the near future, that does come with DFAing Tristan Gray. And by the way, the Twins need a spark offensively. And not that you're relying on rookies to carry your offense, but you need to shake it up with something. And they decided not to trade for another bat, which I advocated for. They decided not to do that. And so now they need to call up. They're essentially saying, we don't need to trade for anybody because we want these rookies to come up at some point, or we trust with what we have. And right now, what you have isn't working. You need to lean on the rookies to at least give you something. But you can't fall into the territory of wanting things to be different for the sake of being different and then upheaving things. And then if it doesn't work, you sit there like the comic where he goes, I want things to be different, and then throws up all of the things and breaks all of his furniture and then just sits in his living room full of trash and goes, oh no. And that's what you don't want to do if you're the Twins. But that being said, Walker Jenkins has earned this call up. All right, well, we are going to wrap things up for today's show. Again, thank you for making Locked On your first listen every day. For your second listen, find the all-night Locked On MLB game night. Every game, every night until a World Series champion is crowned. You can get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB game night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. All right, you can find me on X at BombCJ30. Follow Locked On Twins on X at Locked On Twins. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, comment what your thoughts on this Twins team are. Should they call up Walker Jenkins? How do you make that move? What do you think about Joe Ryan? I want to know. Leave it down in the comments below. I'll see you next time.